The car of the decade, the Bugatti. Bugatti. It isn't flawless, but it comes remarkably close. Long before Bugatti became a name murmured among billionaires and collectors, its origins were far humbler. The legend began not in a glitzy showroom, but in a dimly lit basement in Germany. There, a young man with no formal engineering education built a machine so advanced, it shocked industry veterans. Ettore Bugatti's story is no fairy tale. It's a saga of ambition, betrayal, tragedy, and rebirth. He lost everything in the turmoil of war, yet saw his name reborn in carbon fiber and speed, etched into the world's most revered hypercars. This is the extraordinary journey of how a boy obsessed with perfection created what many consider the greatest hypercar ever built. It all began with a single prototype. Ettore Arco Isidoro Bugatti was born on September 15, 1881, in Milan, Italy, a city alive with art, elegance, and craftsmanship. His father, Carlo Bugatti, was a celebrated designer of furniture, jewelry, and silverware. Carlo's creations were known for their bold forms and intricate detailing, often blurring the line between functionality and fine art. This passion for aesthetics shaped Ettore from the beginning. While others viewed machines as cold and mechanical, he saw grace in motion, poetry in pistons. The rhythmic pulse of an engine wasn't just a matter of mechanics to Ettore, it was a form of art, an orchestration of sound and motion. His upbringing in a household filled with ornate beauty and relentless creativity instilled in him a deep appreciation for detail and form, qualities that would later define his automotive masterpieces. His epiphany came around the age of 16 when he received a tricycle. But Ettore didn't just ride it. He dismantled it, modified the chassis, adjusted the gearing, and reassembled it into a machine that was faster and more stable. His father, watching closely, recognized in Ettore's careful improvements the same devotion he applied to his own craft. This wasn't mere tinkering, it was vision, an eye for both function and beauty. Ettore approached mechanical problems with the mind of a sculptor and the curiosity of an engineer. Encouraged by Carlo, Ettore began an apprenticeship at Prix and Stucchi, a Milanese firm known for making bicycles and sewing machines. It was here that he was first allowed to experiment with engines, blending his fascination with movement and precision. Surrounded by wheels, gears, and grease, Ettore immersed himself in learning. He absorbed the nuances of mechanical design, studying how things moved, how power was transferred, and how stability and speed could coexist. By the age of 17, Ettore had built his first motorized vehicle, a tricycle powered by twin Didion engines. Today known as the Type 1, the machine was rudimentary by modern standards, but groundbreaking for a teenage inventor. More importantly, it marked his first real step into the world of automobiles. For Ettore, it wasn't just about making something work. It was about making it beautiful, balanced, and ahead of its time. At Prix and Stucchi, Ettore studied frames and gears the way an artist studies light and shadow. His work was not just mechanical, but expressive. The foundations laid during these formative years would become the core of the Bugatti ethos: engineering meets artistry. Ettore wasn't just building machines, he was shaping the future of performance and design. The machines around him were industrial, yet Ettore treated them like sculptures in progress. This unique perspective, where engineering met artistry, would go on to define every Bugatti ever built. The dream had begun to take shape, but bringing that vision to life would require more than sketches, skill, and passion. Ettore needed backing. He needed a factory. And above all, he needed a prototype that could prove the skeptics wrong. By the time Ettore Bugatti was 20, his name was already being whispered among industrialists in Milan. The pivotal moment came in 1901 at the Milan Trade Fair. There, his newly developed Type 2 automobile captivated critics and engineers alike. Built with the support of Count Guglielmi, an early patron who recognized Ettore's immense potential, the Type 2 was not merely a car. It was a mechanical sculpture, a harmonious fusion of precision engineering and aesthetic restraint. The French Automobile Club awarded it a prize, and the buzz surrounding the young Italian designer began to swell. That buzz soon translated into a job offer. Baron Adrien de Turckheim of de Dietrich, a vehicle manufacturer in Alsace, hired Ettore as the technical director of his car plant. At just 20 years old, Ettore was now responsible for overseeing vehicle design and production in a region straddling the cultural divide between France and Germany. It was a position that required both technical skill and diplomatic finesse. Under de Dietrich, Ettore developed a series of cars, from Type 3 to Type 7, which were sold under the name de Dietrich Bugatti. These vehicles were commercially successful and marked a significant step forward in his career. However, they were also constrained by the company's vision. De Dietrich prioritized robust, large-scale vehicles suitable for the elite and for commercial use. But Ettore had different ideas. He believed speed didn't require heft, and power didn't need to come in bulky packages. He began to chafe under the creative limitations imposed by the company. Ettore yearned to build something that reflected his personal ideals, a car that was light, fast, elegant, and utterly original. By 1911, the Type 13 had made its mark on the global stage. At the French Grand Prix in Le Mans, it shocked the world by finishing second, a stunning achievement for a relatively unknown marque. With a small, nimble car, the automotive world began to take serious notice. Bugatti was no longer a curiosity, it was a contender. Then came war. World War I forced a halt in production, scattering the Bugatti operation and redirecting its energies toward wartime engineering. Ettore moved to Paris and shifted focus to the development of aircraft engines. But even in this turbulent period, the Bugatti ethos persisted: elegance, innovation, and precision in every bolt and bearing. When the war ended, Ettore returned to Molsheim. The factory roared back to life, and so did the Type 13. Now benefiting from post-war refinements in materials and design, the car was better than ever, lighter, faster, and even more responsive. In 1921, at the Brescia Grand Prix in Italy, the Type 13 delivered a resounding message. It swept the top four positions, dominating the field and earning the enduring nickname, the Brescia. This victory marked the beginning of Bugatti's golden age. The Type 13 had evolved from a bold experiment into a race-proven legend, laying the foundation for a line of machines that would define performance and luxury for generations to come. Bugatti, Bugatti, Bugatti. Not flawless, but breathtakingly close. Before the name Bugatti echoed through the garages of billionaires and adorned the wish lists of collectors, it began somewhere far less glamorous. The legend didn't start in a marble-floored showroom. It started in a shadowy German basement. There, a young man with no engineering degree crafted a machine so ahead of its time that even seasoned experts were left stunned. Ettore Bugatti's life wasn't a fairy tale. It was a sweeping epic of ambition, betrayal, loss, and rebirth. He lost nearly everything in the chaos of war, only to see his name resurrected, this time forged in carbon fiber and built for speeds that blurred the limits of physics. This is the story of how a boy, obsessed with beauty and perfection, created what many now consider the greatest hypercar the world has ever seen. And it all started with a single prototype. Ettore Arco Isidoro Bugatti was born on September 15, 1881, in Milan, Italy, a city that thrived on elegance, artistry, and design. His father, Carlo Bugatti, was already a name across Europe, known for his boundary-pushing furniture, ornate silverware, and avant-garde jewelry. Carlo's pieces were both functional and fantastical, part tool, part sculpture. That creative fire lit the world Ettore grew up in. Where others saw machines as harsh and lifeless, he saw them as dynamic, even poetic. To Ettore, engines weren't merely mechanical devices, they were moving art. The rhythmic thrum of pistons, the precise dance of gears, the graceful motion of wheels, all were expressions of harmony and beauty. Raised in a home where aesthetics mattered just as much as function, he internalized the idea that great design must not only work, it must inspire. His defining moment came at 16, when he received a tricycle. But rather than ride it like any normal teenager, Ettore disassembled it. He reconfigured the chassis, altered the gearing, and rebuilt it into something faster, smoother, more elegant. His father, no stranger to craft and vision, recognized what this meant. This wasn't idle tinkering, it was an instinct for innovation. With Carlo's encouragement, Ettore secured an apprenticeship at Prix and Stucchi, a Milanese firm specializing in bicycles and sewing machines. It was here, surrounded by grease, gears, and mechanical rhythms, that his creativity found a new form. For the first time, he was allowed to work with engines. And he didn't just build, he studied, experimented, refined. By 17, he had built his first, motorized vehicle, a three-wheeled machine powered by two Dion engines. It would later be known as the Type 1. Crude by today's standards, it was nonetheless a technical leap for a teenager with no formal training. But more than its specs, the machine represented something bigger, Ettore's transition from dreamer to inventor. He wasn't just assembling a vehicle, he was shaping a philosophy. At Prix and Stucchi, Ettore approached every component, frames, axles, gears, with the mind of an artist and the discipline of an engineer. He studied them the way a painter studies shadow and light. These formative years laid the groundwork for everything Bugatti would become, a brand where engineering met elegance, where speed wasn't achieved at the expense of beauty, and where every vehicle was as much a sculpture as it was a machine. Jean Bugatti was behind the wheel of a masterpiece, the latest evolution of the Type 57, affectionately nicknamed the Tank for its aerodynamic body and dominant performance at Le Mans. It was meant to be a routine test drive near the Molsheim factory, but tragedy struck in an instant. A cyclist, trespassing on the closed track, appeared without warning. Swerving to avoid him, Jean lost control of the car. It slammed into a tree. He was killed instantly. Jean Bugatti was only 30 years old. For Ettore Bugatti, the loss was soul-shattering. He had already mourned the death of his younger brother, Rembrandt. Now he had lost his son, his most gifted child and the heir to the Bugatti legacy. Jean wasn't just Ettore's protégé. He was the future of the brand. But grief didn't have time to settle. Just weeks after Jean's funeral, the world was plunged into war. In September 1939, World War II erupted. German forces swept into Alsace and occupied the Molsheim factory. Ettore, anticipating the invasion, had relocated some of the machinery to Bordeaux, but it wasn't enough. The Nazis demanded that Bugatti turn over his factory and manufacture vehicles and torpedoes for the Third Reich. Ettore refused. Faced with political pressure and mounting financial losses, he was forced to sell the company and most of the factory equipment for a fraction of their value. Still, he held on to hope. Ettore applied for French citizenship, and in 1947, the French government formally restored ownership of the Bugatti brand to him. It should have been a turning point, a rebirth, but fate had one last blow to deliver. Just 10 days later, Ettore Bugatti died in a Paris hospital, weakened by a lung infection and a recent stroke. He was 66. With his passing, the original Bugatti era came to a quiet end. Jean was gone. Ettore was gone. And without the resources to rebuild, the factory closed its doors. A name once revered on racetracks and whispered in royal courts faded into memory. Though Bugatti as a company continued briefly under Ettore's youngest son, Roland, the spark had dimmed. A few prototypes emerged in the post-war years, but the world had changed. France's punitive tax laws on high-horsepower engines and the rise of mass production left little room for a brand built on handcrafted excellence. By 1956, Bugatti halted production entirely. For the next 4 decades, the marque was a relic, known more for its storied past than any living future. That all changed in 1998. Volkswagen Group CEO Ferdinand Piëch, a man with a personal obsession for engineering perfection, led the acquisition of the Bugatti name. The story goes that it was his son's fascination with the Bugatti model car that reignited interest. VW paid a reported $50 million for the rights to the name alone, but Piëch wasn't buying nostalgia, he was investing in legacy. Volkswagen moved Bugatti operations back to Molsheim, symbolically returning to the brand's birthplace. There, the most audacious automotive project in modern history began. Piëch issued a nearly impossible challenge: build the fastest, most luxurious road car the world had ever seen. The result? The Bugatti Veyron 16.4, unveiled in 2005. Powered by an 8.0-liter, quad-turbocharged W16 engine producing over 1,000 horsepower, the Veyron shattered all expectations. With a verified top speed of 254 miles per hour and a 0-60 time of just 2.5 seconds, it became the fastest production car on the planet. Its dual-clutch transmission delivered buttery-smooth shifts, and its interior was a temple of hand-stitched leather, polished aluminum, and carbon fiber. The Veyron was less a car than a technological moonshot. It was also a financial sinkhole. Each one cost more to build than it sold for. But Volkswagen didn't care. Profit was never the point. Prestige was. In 2016, Bugatti unveiled its next evolutionary leap, the Chiron, named after legendary Bugatti racing driver Louis Chiron. The Chiron built on the Veyron's achievements and pushed even further. Its updated W16 engine now delivered an astonishing 1,500 horsepower. In a specially tuned version, the Chiron broke the 300 miles per hour barrier, becoming the first road-legal car to do so. But like its predecessors, the Chiron wasn't just about numbers. Every detail, from the meticulously machined titanium components to the perfectly symmetrical leather stitching, embodied the Bugatti ethos: power with poise, speed with soul. At a base price of around $3 million, and with custom commissions soaring higher, the Chiron was a declaration of automotive artistry. Still, the economics remained precarious. For years, Bugatti existed more as a statement piece in Volkswagen's crown than a revenue driver. As emissions regulations tightened and the world's gaze shifted toward electric mobility, VW began seeking a more sustainable path for its most extravagant marque. In 2021, the future arrived: electric, innovative, and surprising. Volkswagen merged Bugatti with Croatian electric hypercar startup Rimac Automobili, forming a new company, Bugatti Rimac. Founded by mate Rimac, a brilliant young engineer known for building electric cars that could out-accelerate anything on the road, Rimac was the perfect partner to write the next chapter of Bugatti's story. The mission: to fuse Bugatti's century-old heritage of craftsmanship and design with Rimac's cutting-edge electric technology. The result is a brand poised at a dramatic intersection, where tradition meets transformation, where a legacy of combustion roars toward an electric horizon. It is no longer just a symbol of speed, but a bridge between eras, between art and science, elegance and innovation, the past and what's next. Ettore Bugatti may not have lived to see it, but his vision endures. Perfection is not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. The name Bugatti once faded into silence. Now, it speaks again, with the thunder of 1,000 horses, and the whisper of a future still being written. While quietly preparing for a reinvention that even Ettore Bugatti couldn't have imagined, one thing remains unchanged. This is a brand built on boldness. Evolution is in its DNA. And now, the next chapter is waiting, ready to roar to life. Have you ever driven or ridden in a Bugatti? Share your experience in the comments. We'd love to hear your story.